Welcome on into Cardinals Central 365. It is Sunday, October the 5th, 11:11 on the dot. Make a wish, Ethan Hannaford. That's Ethan. He's the man. I'm Luke Slabaugh. No Cardinal baseball games to talk about today. And in fact, more of a looking forward to this 2025-2026 off-season. Ethan Hannaford, when it comes to your off-season to-do list, things you want to check off, things you want to see the Cardinals explore in the winter, where do you start?
Well, hello there, Luke. It's a pleasure to be back on with you. And we're kind of in this period of time, right, where you can start looking ahead to 2026, but the postseason's still going on, so that's going to naturally slow down the progression of things that Chaim Bloom is going to be able to do right now. He mentioned that on the Cardinals Insider podcast last week with Chip Carey and Brad Thompson, that it's going to take a little while for them to actually be able to, for fans to actually see the things that they're doing right now. This is a period of preparation. What does that mean for us? Well, we have more time to kind of look back on 2025 and the season that it was, what we took from certain guys, and what we think we could see this upcoming year. But right now, there's not necessarily anything brand new, fresh that is coming out regarding what Chaim Bloom is doing. Give that a little bit of time. Let's get through October. Let's get past the World Series. And then those conversations are going to start picking up. As far as off-season to-do lists, well, the first one was going to happen no matter what, and that was the end of season press conference. That was number one on it, getting a vision for the direction in which they wanted to go. That was first and foremost the most important thing that had to happen this offseason, because you had to get the fans bought in on the messaging of the new leadership in the Cardinals organization. And I think that Chaim Bloom did a pretty good job of that. So the first thing, you got the first thing done. All right. You built some momentum. And now next is going to be starting to figure out which player. I'm sure they already have an idea, but you're going to have to start figuring out which players gauge interest around the league and how much interest there is. So that is, in my opinion, as far as offseason to-do list, that's number two. And then going from there and figuring out which ones you can trade. In my opinion, Nolan Arenado has to be the first guy that you're doing everything that you can to trade away. It's no disrespect to Arenado. I think there's a great respect in St. Louis for the player that he is, the work that he puts in to be great. Unfortunately, at this point in his career, I don't know if what the Cardinals are paying for him is just worth it anymore with the direction that they are going. So figuring out a way to open up that spot. Once you find a way to trade Nolan Arenado, go from there. The part that makes it difficult, right, is, we saw last year they were trying to trade Arenado pretty late into the offseason, and they weren't able to make anything work. Now, they probably weren't going to do that much more either way, but it restricted what they could do because they still had Arenado on the roster. A concern for me would be, Luke, if this Cardinals team tries trading Arenado, but we get into January, maybe even early February, and he's still here, it limits what you can do outside of that, because you still don't, that at that point they're probably still going to be trying to trade him. You just don't know if he'll be here. So the number one thing for me, trade Nolan Arenado as far as guys to move on from. The area where it might get difficult is if that's still number one on the list and you don't feel as though you're able to do anything else prior to that. That won't be the case, I'm sure, but it'll be much more difficult if they aren't able to trade him immediately. I want to kind of like gel back and forth on this and not necessarily have it be like, these are my 5 or 6 things, and then you throw out your 5 or 6 things. I want to kind of gauge thoughts, go back and forth on this. Where are you at as far as those first couple that I threw out?
I'm with you on those, and I have a complimentary idea to tack onto that in 1 second. First, want to say that this show and all content here at STL Sports Central brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Also, we're powered by Gray Bar today on Card Central 365. I see a bunch of you filing in for the first time. If you're watching, maybe not subscribed here, we got a good community in the comments. Leave your thoughts. We like to interact with you. I know sometimes I get on a tangent and I don't highlight the comments here, but Aaron Dodson, loyal viewer. Aaron, thanks for tuning in today. Says, I don't see much changing this offseason. Words are cheap and I need action. He continues, 35 of the 40 men on the roster need to change. Still have no ace and no number two and no power bat, no studs. Mason Windu commenting as well. Thank you. He says, sounds like last year the number one, number two, and number three priorities were on moving Nolan Arenado. He says it's less money to eat now. I think DeWitts have already given the green light. And Mother Goose says, what we think needs to be done isn't what Heimdall's folks are going to do, which is a good thing. And I agree, Mother Goose. Thanks for tuning in for the first time. I'm holding in a sneeze right now, but I believe that this is a good topic to bridge on. And
I tip my cap to you as you go through that. Yeah, interesting comment here from Mother Goose, a U instead of an O in Mother. As you mentioned, what we think needs to be done isn't what Heim and his folks are going to do, which is a good thing. I'm curious if you could even give further detail in the chat as to what that thing would be. I'm curious. You said that you agree with that, Luke. What is that in your mind?
Well, we're seeing a lot of, and I use this word respectfully, stubbornness when it comes to branches of thought of how to retool an organization. Credit to President of Baseball Ops Chaim Bloom for saying, just straight to the point, we are not going to sacrifice long-term gains for short-term success. Like, these next 2 years, a transitory period for the franchise, could be turbulent and they could be tough sledding. Frankly, Ethan, I don't see this team outperforming what it did in 2025 with the people you have in the boat right now. Bloom also said that he does not categorize players right now as in the boat or out the boat. Certainly, like, that is a great way to stitch the organization together. Like, you don't want to cause division by saying, and this is just hypothetical, yeah, we really like Iván Herrera, we're going to retool him into a catcher who can play defense, and Burleson, no, we don't see a future here, we're just going to move off. That's a hypothetical situation. I'm just throwing out names. You don't sow division and discord by having that school of thought. So here's what I would say. Part of a retool and a rebuild for a team to try to get in a better position in 2 to 3 years is bringing in talent from outside the organization that other people have given up on. People refer to these players as lottery tickets, guys you can get on a short 1 to 2 year deal, maybe prove it candidates. And we've seen the more successful rebuilds in baseball history go after guys that were on their last leg or had been injured and given up on for a long time. So if you look at the free agent market and take away some of the sexier names at the top of it, like, I don't anticipate the Cardinals going after a Kyle Tucker type, although that would be awesome. And that's the way a best fan in baseball type would say is, we need to go get Kyle Tucker and we need to go get, Zach Gallen is almost a flyer candidate at this point, but like, we need to get a top of the rotation starter and Dylan Cease must be wearing Cardinal red. Like, that's very 2007 school of thought. Okay with that. However, in the short term, I don't know if that makes sense for this club. So looking for guys that have been given up on. I think of like a Cedric Mullins, who really bottomed out with the Mets this year towards the end in Baltimore. He's a few years removed from a 30-30 season. Plugging him on a 1 to 2 year deal. How about like a Chris Paddock, perhaps, someone to fill out a rotation? Or who else? Like a Zach Eflin coming off an injury marred season, but at his best, can fill into a middle of the rotation fringe number 2 type. Guys that can be a 1 to 2 prove it deal. And if they don't work out, or if the team doesn't perform as well as it did a few years ago, then you flip those guys, bring in more minor league talent into the organization, and we're all square for 2027. That's what I think this next year or two is going to look like. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. I agree, especially when it comes to the pitching names. There isn't enough in organization. There isn't enough in organization straight up, flat out, to have a full starting rotation for next year. So they're going to have to get creative because, as you mentioned, I don't think we're going to see them spending big money on the superstar pitcher. That's never really been the Cardinals' style. Sonny Gray was the largest free agent contract that they've ever handed out, and that was 3 years. So it's $75 million. Is that right? Yeah, $75 million. So I don't expect them to go out and spend a boatload of money. You have the potential lockout coming in 2027. That is going to be taken into consideration as far as how much money the front office is going to spend prior to. So Chaim Bloom's going to have to be creative as far as who he's going to bring in, what kind of guys he wants to bring in. I see it much more likely that we see guys on the pitching side brought in from outside the organization. Not to say that the Cardinals couldn't use power. They couldn't use more speed in their lineup. There will be some there is going to be some movement in the offseason, but I think that they have a little bit of a better base built in their lineup than they do in their rotation right now. So I think we're more likely to see outside help brought in from the pitching over the offense. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't go and bring in something creative, but you also have guys down in the minors right now, specifically JJ Weatherholt, that seems ready to go, right? Seems like he is banging on the door, ready for a starting position in that infield. You would have to clear out quite a few names in order to bring someone in to fill in, I guess, in the starting lineup. And I don't know if I necessarily see that happening. I could see them moving offensive pieces out to perhaps bring in pitching or pitching prospects, but I don't know if I see them, moving on from offensive pieces to bring in offensive pieces necessarily.
I see a comment here that I want to highlight, and I appreciate you all being so enthusiastic on this Sunday morning. We got NFL football around the corner. McGill Design comments on YouTube, Cards need to follow the Doug Armstrong retool method, an Army reference. My friend, the late Ben Arnett, would be very mad at me for making cross sports puns right now. Ben, I knew at Mizzou. That was the biggest pet peeve of his. Was like, yeah, the Cardinals kick off their season. No one's kicking anything. There's no kickoff to a season. Army has been superior in winning trades for long-term assets and potential. This is true. While Mozeliak excelled at deadline veteran pitcher deals. No lie detected in this. And if you want to short circuit the rebuild and do that, I think that's great. Another comment I'll bring up here. Just because we could get into particulars, and this is an intriguing case. Scott Hettenhausen, thank you for commenting and listening here on YouTube. He says, do you think Lars Nootbaar will be gone, traded away?
Well, you look at the talent that the Cardinals have in their outfield right now. There's a lot there. So you're going to have to move on from someone. I might need a little bit of assistance with this. We're in the offseason now, but if I go through and just name off the options that the Cardinals have in the outfield, we have Jordan Walker, we have Alec Burleson, we have Victor Scott. I'll throw in Nathan Church just for the heck of it because he was there. And then in left field, you got Lars Nootbaar. I'd still say throw Brendan Donovan in the mix. Didn't play there much last year, but know that he has shown the ability to do so plenty throughout his career. And then, did I say Lars Nootbaar already? I don't remember if I said Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah.
Okay, I said Lars Nootbaar, but that's 6 guys. Like, the math just does not add up. And at one point, we were saying Iván Herrera too as 7 because it looked like they were going to start moving in the direction of him being an option in the outfield. I don't know if that's going to be the case now, at least in the immediate. But you have a lot of options there, and you know that there's some guys that they are not ready to move on from yet, specifically Jordan Walker. You know how they feel about Victor Scott being their future in center field. Alec Burleson's been really good. He's going to get some time at first, but Wilson Contreras is going to be there as well. So you're going to have Alec Burleson playing in the outfield at least 3 times a week probably. Very quickly, the outfield stacks up, and it just feels like someone's going to be the odd man out. And in my mind, it feels like it could very well be a situation going into next year where Lars Nootbaar is the odd man out. There's going to have to be some turnover at some point. And I think that Nootbaar is the natural one that comes to mind. Now, this is without taking into considerations what the offers, what the returns are going to be for some of these guys. We don't know how the league necessarily views them. Mason Windu commenting here saying, I could see maybe a deal where someone like Newt is traded to the Dodgers for someone like Gonsolin, just looking at contracts, free agency, ARB status. And that wouldn't be something that I would be closed off to necessarily. I know Gonsolin's had some injury issues like Nootbaar in his career, but has also shown the ability to be a very effective starting pitcher at this level. So that would potentially grow some intrigue from yours truly. But yeah, it feels like right now, in my personal opinion, Luke, Lars Nootbaar is the odd man out.
I remember seeing Tony Gonsolin pitch at Busch Stadium. It was 2022. I was sitting in the outfield bleachers, and he was on this stupid like 13-0 start to the season or something
Yep.
like that. That's the last thing I remember. But he just recently had elbow surgery, if
I
memory serves.
remember
But
that
again,
game.
like,
I was running
yeah,
the board.
that was
I was running the board at KMOX for that game. I remember that game very specifically, and we had a
man.
big lead on him early. We jumped out to like a 5 or 6-0 lead, and I don't know if we lost or if we almost lost. We almost gave it up, but it ended up. I do remember that game.
First of all, can we take a minute to appreciate the seance that you went through just to like remember the Cardinal outfielders, like the fringe candidates? You're like Nathan Church, love it. This comment from McGill Designer was kind of a coda to what he had just commented about Doug Armstrong. Again, like apples and oranges, but it's Sunday. Army wasn't afraid to fire Drew Bannister for a known hot commodity and Jim Montgomery, something the Cards won't do. How surprised are you that the Cardinals are running it back with manager Ollie Marmol in his contract year?
I'm not surprised at all. That 0% of me is surprised. You look at what Ollie Marmol has done these last 2 years, and when I see fans criticizing the Cardinals for keeping Ollie Marmol, it almost makes me kind of be disappointed to a certain extent, because when you look at, if you are basing what Ollie Marmol is solely based off of the Cardinals record the last 2 years, then you should be better than that. Like, I expect better out of Cardinals fans. That is a shallow way to determine how good a manager is. There are times when you can define how good a manager is based off of a team's record. This is not a time. This roster has not been talented the last 3 years. It just has not been, in large part. And Ollie Marmol, I think, all things considered, has done a very respectable job with a young roster, with a young clubhouse that doesn't have a lot of talent. We've talked about the issues that this roster has. Why does that fall on Ollie Marmol? Why should he be fired as a result? And let me ask you this. I'll play into McGill's to his baseball, hockey like comparisons here. Where is the Jim Montgomery? Where is the Jim Montgomery of Major League Baseball right now? He was by far the best available option in the NHL. It wasn't anything against Drew Bannister. In fact, Doug Armstrong said this. He's like, I have a lot of respect for Bannister. It just didn't match up with where we were at the time. When a guy to the caliber of Jim Montgomery becomes available, a guy that had just led the Boston Bruins to a record-breaking season the year before, what are we doing? Where's the comparison? McGill, I appreciate you. I love you. Says nothing against Marmol. This is about putting butts in seats. The Cards are desperate for attendance. They need to think revenue, whether fair or unfair to Marmol. No, that is not how you operate an organization. Yes, like the fans should be in mind, but you don't make decisions solely based off of the fans. Because if you did, you would make the wrong decision constantly. Because fans think in large part with their emotions. They're fanatics. That's what they do. I'm not blaming them or criticizing them for it. But if you made decisions based off of them, then you would end up in the wrong far too often. So I don't agree with this situation at all. The Blues situation is entirely different. The Blues didn't make that decision because Drew Bannister. They were like, oh, we just have to move on from Drew Bannister. They did it because by far the best option in the National Hockey League became available, and they rolled with it. That is not the same situation here. So I digress. Go ahead.
I love that for a couple of reasons. You're absolutely right that this is not the right school of thought. This is very much LA Angels, Miami Dolphins organization where from the top down, it's just kind of rotten at the core where it's like, we got to do big stuff. Like,
Yeah.
we got to get the fans in seats. Let's do big stuff. It's like J.J. Abrams trying to put together a Star Wars movie. It's just, it's incohesive and it ultimately sucks, right? Like it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Before I have an answer though. You said, who is the Jim Montgomery of baseball? Again, slippery slope here because baseball, hockey, two different worlds.
Sure.
Adam Well, he commented this. He says, we're in a position because the Cardinals have missed on every top pitching selection besides Palante, he said, if you want to call it that, and Michael McGreevy, who again is, a pitch to contact guy. He's not an ace by any stretch of the imagination, but hangs tough. Like he's a competitive, good guy who could string together some good seasons for the Cardinals. All right. I'm going to give you an answer about managerial stuff because that is something I wanted to get into today. And I cannot for the life of me find any news that we covered regarding the managing carousel in baseball. But first, let's get our gambling in. Let's talk about DraftKings, guys.
Sure.
DK Sportsbook coming to Missouri. Sign up now. You can get $300 in bonus bets when DK Sportsbook launches on December 1st. Download now. Place a $5 bet when they go live. Ethan, it brings everything you need to elevate your game day. Live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, endless ways to get in on the action, all from your little cell phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, with fast money withdrawals. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when they go live December 1. That's code STL SPORTS in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Well, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Oh my God, did I just exit out of it? No, I didn't. Okay. Wow. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons today.
You had a
I thought I
moment there.
killed the stream. All right. You asked me. I had a moment. I panicked a little bit. You asked me, who is the Jim Montgomery of Major League Baseball? Who is the can't-miss managerial candidate who has prime years left to go, who has established success, who has done things the right way? And the sexy name that was being tossed around by multiple national columnists was Skip Schumacher, former Cardinals World Series champion and bench coach under Ollie Marmol, went to Miami, won Manager of the Year, and then lost 100 games the next year and was booted out. Listen, Little Havana is where baseball careers go to die. Everyone who wants to see sustained success for the Miami Marlins ultimately comes up short, whether it's Derek Jeter or Kim Ng or Don Mattingly talking about major league managers, or Giancarlo Stanton or Marcelo Zuna or Jazz
Barry
Chisholm.
Bonds.
Listen, Balco Barry Bonds was the last name that I thought of, but that's a great Ozzie Guillen. Like everyone who wanted to do something of note in Miami ultimately was fizzled out and moonwalked out the back door. Jack McKeon even winning a World Series there. Jim Leland getting the short end of the stick. Joe Girardi. This is just, this is a murderer's row of the hall of what could have been, right? But an organization that doesn't take baseball seriously. So Skip got the short end of the stick there. And immediately, Chris Young, speak of impulsive presidents of baseball operations, former player, swoops in and says, we got to have you in our organization. Don't know how, because we just hired Bruce Bochy, but please get in the boat. And so Skip does this little advisory special assistant role for a season. And obviously the heir apparent to Bruce Bochy down there. It would be a surprise if Bochy latches on with anyone. He's a Hall of Famer,
70.
and it doesn't make sense for him. Yeah, it doesn't make sense for him to continue on after winning a World Series and bringing a championship to Arlington, and they desperately wanted and needed that. So he's a hero as far as I'm concerned. Skip Schumacher could have filled that Jim Montgomery label because he did have he took a bare bones organization, the Marlins, and he and John Jay and John Mabry and company, they got him to the playoffs. That's impressive. And that would have been a good name that Cardinals fans could get behind, but the timing just didn't pan out. So, best of luck to Skip. 45 years old, gets a 4-year deal with the Texas Rangers. He's going to be great. He's going to be a great hire, and it's just organizations in different spots right now. The Rangers they're doing big stuff. Like they think they're in a window. But do you have any thoughts regarding Skip Schumacher? Obviously, I mean a heck of a guy, and he deserves this.
Oh yeah, world class dude. Good for the Rangers. They jumped on him when they did, and for good reason. Here's my thing. I don't know if Skip Schumacher, if the Cardinals would have said, if Chaim Bloom would have said, Ollie Marmol's not coming back, would Skip Schumacher have come back to St. Louis over the situation that he has in Texas right now? Maybe he would have. I mean, this is the hometown spot as far as this is where he played, and we know he loves St. Louis. But I tell you what, they got money, they got young prospects. They have a young front office, Chris Young, new to the position. I think that's a pretty prime time situation to be in right now in Texas. I don't know if he would have left. I mean, and maybe this isn't the reason, but nobody was really mentioning him as the guy in St. Louis to replace Ollie Marmol. Everyone was going to Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina. When Skip Schumacher would have by far been the better option than either of those two. Not to say that they can't be great managers eventually someday in the league, but I mean, Skip Schumacher has done it. And I think there's a lot of potential for him to be really good in that position. Mason Windu commenting here, saying Marmol does seem to have the support of almost the entire St. Louis media. I find that a little odd. Why? Now, let me ask you this. Mason Windu, why is that odd? Why is that odd? Why is it weird that the people that are around the organization far more than anyone, from an outsider's perspective, that are around it far more than anyone, that see the behind the scenes, why would they be behind Ollie Marmol? Maybe because they see the things that he's doing and recognize that he's doing a decent job with what he's been given. I think that's what it is. I'm not trying to be a jerk or sarcastic. I've seen this a lot. Like, oh, the St. Louis media is just soft. It's just soft on the Cardinals. They don't dish it out enough. And is it that, or is it just like they understand the situation? And not to say that every single St. Louis media member is perfect, that it isn't flawed or handles every single situation the perfect way. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is I think that there's this blind, like, they don't give enough pushback or they don't criticize Ollie Marmol enough on decision-making. Therefore, like, they're one-minded with John Mozeliak and yes men. And I don't think that's the case at all personally. Luke?
My exposure to this is limited. There's a little behind the scenes that I saw at the old mothership, Bally Sports, now FanDuel Sports Network. I believe that there is a mutual respect between some of the leading reporters in the St. Louis market and Marmol. They do ask tough questions and they get respectful answers in exchange for that. There is a growing trend in Major League Baseball and other sports and in the Cardinals organization to leave snark and criticism to outsiders. On this stream in particular, like, I'm cool being sarcastic and critical and being kind of a jerk. Like, that's just how I live my life. I don't know about you, Ethan, but like, I'm okay with dishing it out here in a more limited space. But to your point, yeah, in the clubhouse, I think you get an authenticity from Marmol that has endeared him to the media and the people that make decisions there. So it's no surprise to me that Marmol has some people that are kinder to him. We certainly saw. I mean, think back 20 years ago or even more recently than that, maybe the tail end of the La Russa tenure, and he would get into barking matches with
Bernie.
Bernie or some of the other reporters. I mean, it's the Jeff Jones types. Like there was a time when that was a more acceptable discourse in post game press conference situations. But
But
I think
even
the
even still,
leading,
you still see that in like in today's day and age. Like, I mean, I sat in the clubhouse every single home game for 2 years, and I saw Derek Gould and Ollie Marmol get into it multiple times. I saw Ollie clap back at John Denton, at Jeff Jones. Like, I mean, like, to think that like there aren't tough questions being asked or there isn't pushback is just entirely false. Maybe it's missed, but it's happening.
yeah. And another thing about a transitory time in this organization, Adam Well, who's coming up clutch with the comments today. Adam, I'm proud of you. Says I think Ollie's going to be the fall guy. Give him a year or two. Um, Interesting. I'm trying to dissect this comment. Maybe I should have before I showed it on the screen, but besides Bernie, y'all pretty soft. Randy was on here saying, if you don't show up, they can't spend, and just ignored 30 straight years of showing up. This team wasn't spending when people came. That just speaks to the organizational change in philosophy and that they needed a new voice to run the show, which is what they have now in president of baseball ops, Chaim Bloom. There's a lot to get into on that comment, and we can maybe digest that a
Let
little bit more. But
let's. I want to go back to Adam's comment because on Ollie being the
yeah,
fall guy, because this is a
sure.
situation, unfortunately, that I think could be pretty realistic. I think there is a world in which at some point this gets put on Ollie. My fear, as far as my fears as far as what could happen with him, and if it isn't clear, I have a lot of respect for Ollie Marmol and the job he has done with the roster he's been given the last 2 years. What I would hate is for Marmol to see it through this time of transition of rebuild and to not get to see the success that follows. Because I think that excluding the record, right, which I don't think is a fair way to define his managerial ability, I think that he's proven that he is fitting for the job in a lot of different ways. And I could see that as a realistic thing. And honestly, I've said this to people around me. I I would hate for it to happen if Marmol continues to manage the way in which he has the last couple of years, and we get to the point where the Cardinals are back in a spot where they're a contender, and Marmol is no longer there. That would be unfortunate to me. Now, if you find the right guy to fill his spot, then then all things will heal. If Ollie Marmol would have had 3 straight 2022 seasons where the Cardinals won 93 games and he was the manager, then nobody would be talking about the Mike Schilt firing still, because they wouldn't care, because the Cardinals are having success. It's just the reality of the situation. So if firings in this business are unfortunate, but it is a business. It doesn't mean it's always the right decision. But in those cases, people will forget the firing if it's the right hire.
That they will. And it's an interesting case with Marmol because when he came up, the first year manager, might have been in over his skis, but you had the talent and then the Hall of Fame potential of that Ruthian Albert Pujols run in the second half of the year. You had Yachty, you had Wainwright in their twilight seasons, and everything just kind of fell together. MVP seasons out of Goldschmidt and Arenado. And you kind of had that buffer and kind of that cushion, and it all went away the next couple of years. Like it's a very narrative matters. And also, there's this growing sentiment in Major League Baseball that I don't necessarily agree with, but that the person filling out the lineup card and the manager there on the bench is expendable. It is interchangeable. That was never really the case in the early 2000s or in the
Yeah.
90s
Yep.
when you had like mainstay managers. We mentioned Bruce Bochy earlier, or a Mike Scioscia type for the Angels, which give me 1 second. I have a point to make. And Joe Torre, you okay, let's just get into this because I've been dying to talk about this all
Please
day.
do. Please
Multiple
do.
national reports, multiple national reports say that The LA Angels and owner Artie Moreno are closing in on Albert Pujols as a potential managerial candidate to succeed Ron Washington in Anaheim. Ethan Hannaford, this is stupid. Can you tell me why?
I will gladly tell you why this is stupid. I will happily, with deep joy in my heart, tell you why this is stupid. I don't understand why the heck Albert Pujols would want to manage in Los Angeles. I don't, to a certain extent right now, I don't understand why Albert Pujols would want to manage at all. He's been away from the game now for 3 years, 3 years, and not even entirely away. He still has managed in the Winter League. He's managed in the World Baseball Classic, I think, maybe not. Yeah, I mean, Yachty did. I don't know if Albert did, but he's been around the game. He's still been around the game. Is Albert Pujols a brilliant baseball mind? Absolutely. No one is questioning that. One of the greatest minds from a player perspective in the game that the game has ever seen. Does he have hundreds of millions of dollars to his name? He sure does. So why would you want to manage? Why? Something I think is interesting is, these guys have so much money, and I think to a certain extent, the player life and the manager life, perhaps maybe from at least a fan's perspective, people think it's the same, and it's not. It's totally not. And it is the manager job requires so much more work, so much more time. And listen, I just said Albert Pujols is a brilliant mind. He was around the game for 25 years, 20 years, whatever it was. Like, he knows these things. I just, for everything in me, can't understand why he would want to get back into it, having been around that grind for so long, only a few years removed from retiring. Why he would want to get it now? That isn't even to consider get back into it with an organization as poorly ran as the Los Angeles Angels, where it feels like, you mentioned Miami as a place where managers go to die. How far back are the Angels from there? Because it feels like that's just as much of a spot where things are just constantly poorly executed. It just it feels like another splash move, big attention grabbing move. Does it make the most sense for them to be bringing in a guy that has no managerial experience? Yes, great baseball mind, and this isn't to say that Albert Pujols couldn't be a great manager someday. Not at all. Not whatsoever. But there is a difference between being a good player and being a good manager. And not all, we know obviously that not all good managers were good players. It goes the other way around too, where not all good players can be good managers. So I don't know. It just feels like a very interesting situation in Los Angeles. I don't quite understand why Albert would want that position. Really right now, why he'd want any managerial position, but let alone why he would want that one of all the positions. It feels like something is going to open up for the greatest right-handed power hitter, in my opinion, in baseball history, if he wants it. So why be in a rush and jump into one that doesn't really, wouldn't really aid or benefit you?
Dovetails into one of my pet peeves. There are two when it comes to managerial decisions. One is hiring someone directly out of the broadcast booth because they look and sound good. Aaron Boone. And then the other is hiring a star with limited or no experience. And star can mean many different things. Albert Pujols won a Caribbean Series with Leones del Escondido in the Dominican Republic. So that's a limited action. Like, he's shown leadership skills. He's won something on the international stage. Like, that's impressive. However, the point I'm trying to make here, Ethan, let's just say modern era of baseball. Let's say 1950 onwards. Who was the last star player who made a star manager? I have one answer in mind. Fairly recent in our lifetime. One star player who made a star manager.
Oh, geez. Like, not excluding like way back when. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling to even think of them. You're gonna say it, I'm gonna be like, oh, duh. Who's coming to mind for you?
Joe Torre.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
9-time
yeah, there it
All-Star.
is.
Yeah, and won with the Yankees and had a little twilight season down there in LA. And we don't need to talk about his time with the Cardinals because that, again, was a time of transition. But there's no evidence to suggest that star players consistently make star managers, even if you do it the right way. I think of the late Ryan Sandberg, who went up. He started at the bottom of the Cubs system, made it all the way up, went to a rebuilding Phillies team, and got the boot almost immediately. But even think of guys who were hired just knee jerk. Think of who the Cardinals could have hired after La Russa retired. They went with Mike Matheny, who had no experience, over Terry Francona. That's a choice. David Ross, who endeared himself to a lot of Cubs fans, carried off the field in his last game, hits a home run in his last at bat, is a nostalgia hire after Joe Madden is sent away to 10 years of hard labor in Anaheim. And he doesn't win a whole lot. Frank Robinson was one of the best hitters of all time and never made the playoffs. Paul Molitor, Ted Williams was a very bad hire for the Washington Senators. So there's no evidence to suggest that this knee jerk. It's like playing with all your action figures and just smashing them into each other. Like that's what Artie Moreno's doing. He's like, we got to do big stuff. We got to get Josh Hamilton and C.J. Wilson and put them on the same roster, and we're going to win a lot of play. It just never worked. Like it's that line of thinking.
Did you see the other leading option for the Angels manager's job?
Ollie Marmol.
It's Torrey Hunter.
Ugh.
That, I mean, it just goes to show that is exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is, and I mean, it's not frustrating to me because I'm not an Angels fan. But if I was an Angels fan, I would be outraged personally.
Yeah. So, on this subject, was there something in Pujols' contract with Anaheim when he signed? Because
he has a lifetime contract.
I was going to say he does have like the 10 years of hard labor tacked on to after he retired. And I was curious how that was going to kick in because they let him go. The Dodgers picked him up. I actually was in Chavez Ravine. Like I went to a game when the Cardinals played at the Dodgers and it was post COVID. Like everyone was spaced out in the outfield bleachers. So I couldn't fist fight anyone, Dodgers fans. But Pujols was playing for the Dodgers against the Cardinals. And I was like, this is a trip. And it was before the DH too, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was DH at that time. It's all a blur. But yeah, no, he's bound to them for life. So I was curious when that was going to kick in. This seems like a way to get around that. It's not going to work out for him. Obviously, I wish him the best. McGill design, this doesn't seem feasible. And it also seems like a worst case scenario. Like, why not just start with a rebuilding team and then go with them? That's the problem. Like the Orioles had this with Brandon Hyde. Like first time manager, they're at the lowest of lows. They have all these number one picks, and it's like, get with us through the rebuild phase, and then we'll figure it out. They win 100 games one season, they win 90 games the next, can't win any games in the playoffs, and then the bottom falls out this year, and you're left with a team that doesn't know how to win. Honestly, probably would have been a good fit for an Ollie Marmol to take over that team this year, but I digress. I think that you hit the nail on the head. Like the only way for Albert Pujols to succeed as a manager would be to actually get on a staff. Like we said, Ollie Marmol was, the youngest manager in baseball, but he still was the bench coach under Schilt. Skip Schumacher serving for the Padres and then underneath Marmol before he takes a managerial job. It just seems like it's not a one-to-one comparison, like a transition going from winter league to immediately, oh, I'm the star guy and I'm going to lead the Angels. It ain't going to work, man. It's just, I feel bad. Like I shouldn't feel bad, but I do.
Not to mention that Albert Pujols, I was talking to Frank Cusimano about this the other day, and he said, Ollie Marmol talks to the media on game days multiple times a day. And he said, Albert Pujols did it 10 times in his 10 years here. Talked to the media 10 times in his 10 years here. So obviously a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's something you don't consider with that position is your ability to back the decisions that you made, not do it in a way that draws offense. And Albert Pujols was just never known for being the guy that was all chippy with the media. I know it's a little bit better in his last year here, but rarely talk to the media. So yeah, it just, for a lot of reasons, it just does not make sense to me. And back to McGill's comment, it very much so feels like the question is, why not just do something to do it? And that is not how major league organizations are ran, at least successful ones. So very much so okay with that not being the decision that the Cardinals go with.
Yeah, and I think he kind of agreed. This is what I like about this channel, is that we can have a rational discussion.
Yeah.
The goal today was to get people talking. We've got people talking. There's one comment here that touches on the final topic today. We'll wrap things up in a few minutes, but let's just talk about this, because this was one of the topics that I had planned out for today. It was more in the vein of what's next for Iván Herrera, because there were reports out of St. Louis that they want him to go back to catch, that he wants to catch after a season in which 15 runners stole bases on him and he threw out none of them. Iván Herrera is defensively in a bit of a pickle. He says, what does this mean for Pedro Pages and Joel Poza, with Iván Herrera trying to reinvent himself as a catcher? My first thought on this, and I'll hand it off to you. Another comment by Heimblum in his, let's call it a news conference. He says that we're not going to accept for anything than our best. Like, we're going to, I guess not his words, but maximize potential. Like, if there's decisions to be made, it's going to be in the best interest of the organization. Iván Herrera playing just anything better than what we saw behind the dish this year is going to be an increase in his value. A guy who could, conservative estimate, hit 25 home runs out of the catcher position. You're like, if only there were a player on this roster who had 25 home run potential who could also play catcher. And that's kind of the problem the last couple of years, is that the decisions that have been made on the players side or the baseball operations side have kind of been loser decisions. Like Wilson Contreras, the topsy turviness of him coming in to play catcher to fill in for Yachty, or replace Yachty, excuse me, and then Ollie being like, "Oh, I don't like this. Let's pull him away," to, "Oh, we'll put him in left," to, "Oh, let's put him at first." You would have never seen that decision made 10 years ago. Like, if a guy was slated to be the catcher or be an up the middle talent, he was going to play there. Gosh darn it. And for Contreras to move off of catcher, and now this year for Herrera to have moved off catcher, it's just not a winning baseball decision. It doesn't make sense for the long-term interest of the organization. So what does that mean for Pages and Pozo? Excuse me. Um, who cares? Like, you've
Yeah.
got a potential star in the making here. Like, why would you not have him play catcher unless there were serious physical limitations? And yes, he was dealing with a shoulder injury that we didn't know about, a hamstring injury that he was on the IL for. Like, why would you not pounce on this opportunity? It's just so obvious, and it's just not the way decisions had been made the last few years.
Yeah, so I agree to a certain extent with you. Here's where I would push back, and I agree. The handling of Iván Herrera has been very confusing to me. We knew going into 2025 that he couldn't throw runners out. That narrative has continued early in the season when he was catching, but the bat took great levels of improvement this year. It exploded. I mean, it really did. I mean, his 162 game projections were extremely good. I think he was on pace for 29 home runs this year in 162 if he would have played 162 games. So that puts you in an interesting situation, right? The Cardinals elected to only DH him in order to avoid injury, which did work, and his bat continued to play. And then you had that brief period where the team announced that he was going to be getting some reps in the outfield, which, I personally, at the time, this is where we're going to disagree. I think it made sense. And here's why I think it made sense. You look at Iván Herrera's inability to throw runners out. I saw this in a Bernie Miklasz video, Bernie Central video a few weeks ago. Over the last I think it said over the last 2 seasons, he's thrown out 4 of 74 base runners. 4 of 74. It just can't happen in today's day and age of baseball. Now, year's end, He's having surgery on his right elbow to clean up some debris in there. He's going to go through the full catching program this offseason with the Cardinals' new catching coordinator, Ethan Goforth. And then he'll return to catching in 2026. First off, I guess he had been dealing with some pain in his elbow that has been preventing him from being able to throw 100%. Is anything that they do with Iván Herrera at this point going to truly make him a better catcher when it comes to throwing out runners? And if so, how much better is it going to make him? I'm not super optimistic that Iván Herrera's defensive catching abilities are going to make massive strides to the point that you feel good about him behind the plate, at least with the quality of pitching that the Cardinals have right now. I don't know if that makes sense. Stacked on top of the number of catching prospects that they have right now in the system. Now, Raynel Rodriguez is still a couple years away. Leonardo Bernal, who knows? Double-A last year could I wouldn't surprise me if he's the Triple-A starting catcher next year. You got Jimmy Crooks that got a taste of the majors this year. Didn't go great, but you know what? It didn't go great for Mason Wynn a couple years ago in his final month of the year, either during his debut month. That's pretty normal. So I get it. I get it in the sense of, listen, he's a catcher. Give him an honest shot as a catcher. I understand that. But there's also parts of this to me that say, like, what are the odds that it works and that Iván Herrera is your long-term catcher? And you don't know unless you give it a shot. I understand that. Some people would argue that the shot has already been given. Some people would say you need to see a little bit more. All I'll say is this: 4 of 74. That can't continue. And and this has been a thing for Iván Herrera for as long as I can remember. His inability to throw runners out has always been a concern, dating back to his time in the minor leagues. It's not like this is brand new. So I'm hesitant that it's going to work. I'm hopeful it does, because you're right. Having a guy that could hit 25 home runs as your full-time catcher, Picasso, I mean, that'd be beautiful. But like I said, I'm hesitant at this point that it is going to end up paying off.
I would give it a 4 in 74 chance of working out. And to your point earlier, you can never have too many catching prospects. I love that they gave Jimmy Crooks a look late in the season, even though it was a little turbulent for him. If prospects always panned out, we would be talking about a Cardinals team fresh off a World Series victory with Anthony Reyes and Shelby Miller at the top of the rotation and Nick Plummer hitting the game-winning home run. So, like, things change pretty quickly in baseball. That's my point. Greg Honold, or Onold, whatever your name is. And this is, like Marmol said, there was an unspecified shoulder like pain or injury as well. In addition, you said elbow and the hamstring as well. Like this game of operation we're playing today says if you have a shoulder issue, wouldn't it like hurt more to throw farther from the outfield? That's a good devil's advocate argument there. And no one really knows the timing of when the shoulder started hurting compared to the elbow to all that. Let's get him healthy and get ready to go. Final thoughts. We're approaching 56 minutes here, and you got stuff to do. I got stuff to do. Man, final thoughts as we tailspin into this offseason.
It's going to be a busy one. I think we covered some of the there's so many different things to break down and discuss. You know, people right now aren't necessarily Iván Herrera in his future as the catcher is not on the forefront of people's minds. Now, this current headline, what's on your offseason to-do list, that probably is one of the more main ones. The handling of, Albert Pujols to Skip Schumacher to Ollie Marmol, like those aren't the things necessarily on the top of people's minds. So I think that we were able to cover some of the things that, a lot of people say, oh, we're going to cover, but we're going to get to it at some point. But you know what? Because Card Central 365 is every single day, we have the opportunity to cover some of those more in-depth things, like the status of Iván Herrera and those other things. So going to be a busy offseason. Chaim Bloom has his work cut out for him, but I'm excited to be able to cover it all offseason long right here on Card Central 365.
Gonna be honest, Ethan, surprised they brought us back for this. Super excited for it. I had to highlight the Mason Windu comment that says we don't want a Rafael Devers situation to develop. You have to let Herrera try to catch. Not a one-to-one comparison at all. And Verlis Ginn or Gwyn, thank you for commenting here and putting a cap on this conversation. Says I believe deep down there's an ace-like starter in the minors and the middle of the order bat as well. Tink hence. All I got to say about that. That's my take. Thanks everyone for tuning in to Card Central 365 on this Sunday, October the 5th. He's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. All content presented by our friends at DraftKings. The crown is yours. Have yourself a wonderful day.